So let's get started, and we're going to get started with our multi-sided. So part of this, we're going to go over the requirements for multi-sided, and then the other part, we're going to go over kind of the budgeting part, which we're hoping to eventually have like a complete just financial, deep down financial training. But the multi-sided, your budget is just a little bit different. So we just want to go over some of the information on the budget, but it also kind of goes in with some of your other requirements like the monitoring and such like that. But just again, so you are aware, on page 4 of our training manual, we have our consultants. So everybody has a consultant. It's who comes out and does your review. You can contact them at any time for technical assistance. Their information, again, is on page 4. We have had a couple of new people, if you are not aware. Denise Whelan retired last February, and Pat retired in October. Sandy Bullard has taken Pat's position, and Leanne Roush took Denise's position. But their information is now current and up to date in the manual. If you go to the resource library, we have a training manual there. That information is up to date and current with their information. The numbers located in there are cell phone numbers, so you can text them. You can email them, and if you do text them, just kind of let them know who you're with. We never save numbers in our cell phones. So just kind of an FYI on that. You can always contact our office for questions. And then we also have an email address for CACFP. So our CACFP team that is in the office, they all have access to this email address. So sometimes if maybe you're working with one person, because everybody kind of has a little bit different role of what they handle with CACFP, you can send all your information there, questions, documents, whatever you want. And everybody that in our CACFP team does look at that email address. We have kind of gone back to teleworking. That happened. We were all back in the office, I think, in September. And then right before Thanksgiving, they had people telework again. So we have some people that kind of come in the office maybe a day or two. Some don't come in at all. So if you just want to be safe, you may just want to email that address. You can call and leave a message. They are checking their voicemail. But again, if you just want to send stuff to that CACFP email address, you are more than welcome to as well. So we're just going to talk a little bit about integrity about this program, and we talk about this in a couple of our trainings, but all of our trainings are unannounced. We are still doing trainings. We have some people that are with a school district, and schools training or schools reviews were essentially we're having to add an extra year to our review cycle, but that is not the case for CACFP. We have not got any guidance to do anything different than what we're doing. So we are still doing reviews for CACFP, and they are unannounced. You may get a day or two heads up because we may be asking for copies, and I'll talk about that as well. It's kind of for us and for somebody else, but we may be doing the review at home. We may be doing a desk review. They still have to come and observe a meal, but they may be looking at a lot of the documentation at home. But there's also another entity, not us, that are also wanting us to get documentation. So we're kind of using it as a twofold. If you do become seriously deficient, you will be required to do training. And that training, we have split everything up into like sections because we're doing everything Zoom. We're not doing anything in person. And it's really hard to do an all-day training for me and for you to sit there and do it. But we do have training that you will have to do. It will be specified what trainings you have to attend if you become SD, and you do have to redo those trainings within 60 days. You can do them via Zoom, or you can also do them self-paced. We do still offer our Zoom meetings monthly. For those, you go in and register at the training calendar. So what happens is you go to our website, you log in, the training calendar pops up, and that's where you register. Again, if you are going to do our self-paced, you don't sign up through the training calendar. All you do, it's completely separate. You just follow the instructions that are located, and those instructions are located, again, in the resource library under training and workshops. So this is the website that you will go to. This is where our resource library is located. This is where the application and agreement is also, and also where you have access to claims. Now, if you do not have a login, you will need to talk to somebody who does have a login. That's who signed you up in the training calendar. But if you are wanting just the resource library, all you have to do, you just have to go to this website. You do not have to log in. The resource library is open to anybody. So you can go in there, and some of the things that we talk about, they will be in there. Again, our training manual is in there. We have our USDA memos and interactive forms, and a lot of our training information, again, is located in that website. Now, our federal fiscal year, some get a little confused, but our federal fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th. So when we come out, we're looking, so when you have all your documentation, again, it starts October 1 and September 30th is the end of our fiscal year. So we normally would not come out until November if we were going to come out and look at October 1 records. But you'll probably be seeing us a little bit earlier than normal. What we used to kind of do, depending on the territory, if depending on the territory, a lot of times we would do school stuff because we could only be in schools during the school calendar year. We would do some school stuff, and then during Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, spring break, those types of things, and summer is when we were in schools. But now that we're not doing school reviews, they have a couple of things to do with schools, but we may be out just at random times that we normally would not be out, just because of the fact we're not doing school reviews this year. Now, the online application and agreement, I just need to emphasize, because especially, I mean, this needed to always be done. This has always been in our slides, but people are not realizing with COVID, if you have changes to what you're doing, you need to change it in the application and agreement. That's what we go by. That's the contact name that we go by, because we're figuring out a lot of people with their contacts who the CACFP contact is somebody who isn't. I was talking to a church the other day, and they were not getting our emails, and come to find out the CACFP contact was the pastor, but he has nothing to do with CACFP. So make sure you go to the business maintenance page, and whoever it says, if you go down to contact information for CACFP, make sure that person in email is the person that gets all of our emails. If you're changing times when you're serving, all of that information, when we send out letters and stuff now, we do everything via email, and we've been doing that for a couple of years. But please make sure that your information is up to date, because if not, we've had some people complain because they didn't get letters or they didn't get such and such, but the information was wrong. We don't know it's wrong. That's why it's your job and your responsibility to make sure that information is up to date and correct. If you are contracting with any food service, we do have to have a copy of that contract every year. If you are an institution contracting for any services, which I don't think we really have any, you must, or that I'm aware of, we don't have any, you must write a contract and send it to us for approval before you can go out for bid. And that's if you're trying to do any service. It's different if you're doing for food, but that's if you're wanting any help with your services. All institutions must submit a budget. I see that I have two S's on institution, but you guys do that. You do it in your application and agreement. Now, you may have heard some other things coming across called VCA. That also has budget information in there, some financial stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and what that is. We also have the first Tuesday of the month via Zoom, we have an application training. So if you need help filling out the application, you can always go to that training. That training is not on OKEdge, it's not self-paced. But what I tell people, if you want to do that training, sign up. Put the Zoom class like on your phone or an iPad, and then if you haven't done your training for your application yet, you can walk through your application through that if you need any assistance. And we're doing that indefinitely. We're doing it every month. So I know some months we probably aren't going to have any. We had a really good crowd this past week. But that is right now currently the first Tuesday of every month indefinitely. So this is what it looks like when you go to that website. If you click on the website, this is where you log in. If you see here, you can go to the left-hand side and you'll see the resource library. Well, you see part of the resource library, part of the name's cut off. That, again, you have access to without logging in. Now, if you log in, that's when the training calendar will pop up. And I think it does pop up a little bit under the resource library. Like it goes resource library, I think training calendar, and then privacy statement. So if you get to register for the class, someone does have to log in to get you registered, but the resource library, you do not have to have access. You do not have to be able to log in to get there. You can see under the Apple, that is where you would go to enter your claims, and that is a separate login. But this is the website that you go to claim for your application and agreement for all of that. So if you do click on the resource library, it will pop up. This is a little bit old. We did change the resource library just this year. It looks a lot better. We have a lot of different headings now. We have an adult heading. We have at-risk heading. We have added multi-sided. So a lot of things that they were all kind of jumbled in, specifically the center forms and documents. So now it should be a lot easier to find things. We're hoping to add infants soon. That's one heading that I'd like to add. But so if you need stuff specifically for multi-sided, please go to the multi-sided section. At the very, very bottom is our interactive forms. Those are everything that we have that you can do interactively. It's under worksheets. So if you have any forms that you're needing, we have our institution originals, and then we also have interactive where you can type into those, and they're in 2 separate areas. Now, again, this is the business maintenance page. So when you log in, you'll see the business maintenance page, and it'll say the contact information for CACFP. This is where you need to make sure that the correct person is there, and they're the person that can give, like, for instance, I sent an email yesterday with the slides, and that went to the person that is in the contact information. So they should be able to forward that information on to anybody else. So just make sure that information is up and correct. If you scroll down a little bit past that general information, that's where it's going to show that you attended training. So the training will show up, and then it'll have a check mark in there saying that you met all the qualifications, meaning like you were here, you stayed the entire time, or, all that kind of fun stuff. Now, you will have things to upload. And for instance, every year you do have, because you are multi-sided, you do have to upload the Building for the Future form. You no longer have access to upload. It is only done by our office. There were certain things in general, like the DUNS number, license, and the certificate of authority that we were required to upload. You still didn't have access to it. But what was happening was, as people were, say they want to upload their license, they would upload it, but they'd upload it something different. And the whole thing was a jumbled mess. So we actually just took everybody's access away. So if you do need anything uploaded, or if we're asking for anything, you can send it to the CACFP at ste.ok.gov. The reason, like the DUNS and the license stuff, because we have to enter specifically in a place like your license number. We have to enter your DUNS registration, your expiration date. We have to enter those someplace else. That's why you did not have access to that. But now nobody has access to anything. So if somebody is asking for it specifically, of course you can send it to them specifically because they're working on something. But if, say, your just DUNS is expired, you can send it to CACFP at sde.ok.gov. I will say, please put your, we need your DC number, and we need the name of your center, or your AD number if you're an adult day. The reason why is because people don't understand is, like, I'm just going to use ABC daycare. There are multiple ABC daycares in the state of Oklahoma. You may be the only one in your hometown with a daycare center by that name, but we may have like 15 across the state. And so we don't know who is who unless you put that DC number on there. So please make sure you put your agreement number on any information that, just at least in the email, so we know where it goes. So we give the right person the credit for that, because you would hate to do all that work with your DUNS and then we accidentally give it to a different entity with the same name. So something else that's very important with our program is, we call it VCA. It's viability, capability, and accountability. Now, this has always actually been USDA's #1 thing. We have been not diligent enough as a state. We had an Emmy recently, and this is something that they know that we're working on, and we started it this year. So this is something, we may be doing things now that you're like, well, we've never done this before. No, it's because it is a big deal to USDA, and we as a state agency we've been making our processes, but we're now starting to go forward in that process. We've had some changes here in the office since April. I can't believe it's almost been a year. But when all COVID happened, Debbie Hamilton retired. Jennifer Weber took the executive director position, and her old position was called the director of operations. They changed her position, and we now have 2 directors, one over schools and one over daycare. So that's because we're having the attention that we need. That's kind of why some of these changes have occurred. It's needed to occur, but we now have we have our teams that are kind of in charge to make sure that we are doing what we need to do with USDA. So what does the VCA really mean? So you need to be viable. You need to be financially viable and have financial management. It's a really big deal. If anything were to interrupt, like for instance, the government could shut down again. It's happened before. We didn't get our funds. That you can still serve meals without needing our money. Our money, and that's really the purpose of the program. Like the purpose of our program is feeding more nutritious meals to kids that may not have access otherwise. But you have to be financially viable. Like you shouldn't need us to keep your doors open. You don't need us to serve meals. We're just here to help you provide a better meal for these children. You must also be capable. You must be administratively capable to be on our program, meaning you can handle the paperwork, you have adequate staffing, and the ability to manage operations and to be in compliance. Something else I want to note about this page, about this slide, is if you look, there's a box called P38. Our training manual, if you don't have a copy of one, we have the training manual that is located at PDF in the resource library under Center Manual. Anything in the blue box with a page number refers back to that training manual. So again, if you didn't get the copy of the slides, and you later on were like, we talked about such and such in this training, what page was that on in the training manual? This is where that information, this will give you that information right here. Something else is that all institutions must be accountable, and meaning that you must have a program accountability and oversight. You have correct monitoring, record keeping, cost for program authorized expenses. That is what VCA is make sure you're financially viable, that you are capable of being on the program, and you are accountable. So when I say that, you may hear this term called VCA. And what VCA is again, we're making sure that you're financially viable, capable, and accountable to be on our program. Because if you're not, you actually can't participate if we have documentation showing that you are not. So if you were so this is how we're kind of going into the process. If you were SD last year, or if you are new, you are required to fill out VCA. What VCA is we have a form. It's about 7 pages, I believe, but you have to send in documentation showing things to us that you are financially viable, capable, and accountable. Like it asks for financial statements, it asks for your cash flow, it asks for an organizational chart, and what are the job titles and what will they be doing to make sure, and then all your accountability. Now, we are working towards this. If you are with a very large entity, and I know we have one on here that you probably get audited, you probably have a separate audit. We will accept that audit where you don't have to do the VCA. Like if you're a school district, you are audited every year, and we have a copy of the audit. You can't be on our program on the school side without a copy of the audit. So if you're an entity that does get a big audit every year, we will not ask you to fill out the VCA. We will ask for your audit, because that audit is actually much more detailed than the VCA that we are asking for. So it's not bad. It's just asking about your process as a business as a whole, not CACFP, but as your whole entire business. It's asking for your financials. We do have a VCA course that you can take. It's more of a Q&A. So, and it kind of goes over about, again, the significance of it. It's on the first Tuesday of the month. It's in the afternoon, where the application training is in the morning. So if that's something you're just kind of interested, we would also like to do a flat just financials, like what we mean with financials. But the VCA is a really good, just if you're kind of curious, like what we mean by that. It's eventually going to be, I think the budget will end up changing to look like yours. The single-sided has a different budget, but things will be still evolving with the financial side, but things may look different, and we may need things from every institution. But I think that, again, we're still working on processes of how we as a state agency are doing VCA and the information that we're asking for. So let's talk about some record keeping as a multi-sided entity. Now, this is one thing I was kind of mentioning before, is that you may be contacted by your consultant and say, hey, we need copies of all your paperwork, of every single thing that we have to look at, receipts, documents for the month of review, including the date of review. They need copies of this. What it is it is helpful for us for COVID, because we are able to look at everything that you gave us and look at it and do your review off-site. Some people are doing them on-site because it is a big, and they didn't realize about this. They're like, no, I'm going to the center to do the review. And then they were finding out later, the state auditor, for every person that we are reviewing, the state auditor is the one that's wanting all the copies. It's not us. It's just, it kind of came in handy with COVID. This is the first year that they've done that. We have boxes and boxes and boxes of paperwork. We trying to get to where we don't have to do this, but it's something, again, it's not really us wanting it. It's the state auditor. It's just, we have, since the state auditor is wanting this, we have been doing our reviews based on that information as well. So if we even came to that's what happened is we had some that like, no, I'm not asking for all these copies. I'm just going to go to the center and do the review. And then they found out that the state auditor wanted every copies from everybody they reviewed, even if they already reviewed them. So just don't be surprised if we're asking for tons and tons and tons of paperwork. Now, we've gotten the question of who's responsible for paying for the copies. It is the center. It's kind of the cost of doing business. You can charge it off as a CACFP expense because you are making the copies for an audit purposes, but it's not us really asking for that. It is the state auditors. All forms, when it comes to the paperwork, just a reminder that all the forms must be maintained daily by month at each site or the location approved. So we understand, like, today is we're in January, and if I was looking at December records, I understand that because you claim for December, that because you're multi-sided, you may have all your records to claim at one location. And that's fine. So you have all your December records at the main location, wherever that might be. It states in the institution application. But what we're also talking about is when you have, like, say you have 10 sites, that, like, for the month of January, that paperwork should be at those sites for January, even though you may have previous year sites information at your main office. And that's common. So, and that's fine. But that's where we will go to get the information. So I want to talk about, like, the expenditure reimbursement worksheet. So at the end of the month, you use the food purchasing form if you buy your stuff from Sam's or Walmart or any of those. But if you have a vendor, then you just to let us know what is food and milk and what is food related. You don't have to fill out the food purchasing form. But at the end of the month, you put all of those, your receipts, on what we call the expenditure reimbursement worksheet. Now, just a reminder, you do need to have a reimbursement worksheet for each site. So just when we had our staff meeting in November, this is one thing the consultants wanted me to make sure that you're aware that you need to have an expenditure worksheet per site. And this is where you list your administrative and food service labor, your food purchases, your non-food purchases, and any miscellaneous expenses. Now, I understand that you may have everything delivered to one site and then you divvy it up, but please try to keep record of that on the invoices of what is for what site. You need to kind of have that be aware. And again, we need an expenditure worksheet for each site, because when we do come out to do a review, say you have 10 sites, we do 10%. We review 10% of however many sites you have. So we don't have to look at everything. We just have to look at the site that was selected for review, or sites. Something else about administrative and food service labor, and we're going to talk about this when we get to the budget, but one thing is a center cannot charge off more than approved in the online budget. You can always make changes to your budget. It's a budget, so we understand that things are going to be off a little bit because it's just a budget. It's not set in stone. Or you can also not charge off more than the employees being paid. So an example of this is I was at a daycare center, and they were charging off the cook $1,000 a month, which is allowable because they were saying, it's the cook. She works 8 hours, or she maybe worked 5 at this particular center. She worked about 5 hours a day. And they said they were charging off $1,000. Well, what happened was, and that was actually approved in the system, which is fine. But when we look at labor, we will ask to see pay stubs. Well, when I was looking at the pay stub, the lady only got paid at that, like $1,200 a year. A lot of it she was volunteering. So you cannot charge off more than what they're. How can you charge off $1,000 when she only makes $1,200 a year? You can't do that. You have to. If she makes $1,200 a year, you can divide that by, say, 12. And then you can use that amount for the year, but you can't for the month, but you cannot charge off more than what they're actually being paid. And an example too about any labor or and just really anything. It's not just labor, but you cannot charge off something that's not approved. So say you want to charge off mileage, either for monitoring purposes or whatever it is that you're wanting to do, you want to charge off mileage. Well, if it's not in the budget, then you can't put it on your expenditure worksheet. And don't be surprised. I did at risk for 2 years, but we can ask to see documentation to approve it in the budget. So I had one person that lived in Oklahoma City that were saying they spent $1,000 a year in mileage, and I'm like, how is that possible? You live in Oklahoma City and you're just buying food. So anyway, they ended up adjusting their mileage to show much cheaper because they weren't spending $1,000 a month only on CACFP expenses. They may have been spending $1,000 in gas, but that could have been from picking up kids and everything else. That's not from just CACFP. So we may ask for documentation to prove what your, like travel's another big one. We've had some people that have charged off traveling. Maybe they every year they go the national CACFP, and that is fine, but we will want to see upfront documentation like your registering information, and just go to the website and pull off an airline ticket just to show us about how much it might cost. And we will want some supporting documentation. Something else about administrative labor, not food service, but administrative labor. When you are multi-sided, you cannot charge off more than 15% of your reimbursement. This is also in the application agreement, and I'll show you where that's at. But just a reminder, and to be honest, when I was in the field, I was in the field for several years. The multi-sided I had, a lot of them didn't even charge admin labor because they were spending enough when it comes to food and milk and say food service labor. So when we're talking about VCA, there's real quickly, I want to kind of explain. So when you're financially viable, what that means is that your organization or your business as a whole has funds. You can still feed kids without us paying you, that you are financially, you are not needing our money at all. It's just we're helping supply more nutritious meals. And when we come into a review, we also talk about being nonprofit, and that's what this expenditure reimbursement worksheet, that's what it tells us, is that you're in what we call a nonprofit status. So what that means is on the reimbursement, the expenditure reimbursement worksheet, it shows all your expenses for CACFP for that month. What we do is we take what you got in reimbursement. So let's say we're paying you $1,000 a month in reimbursement. We're making sure that you're spending that amount of money or more per month is being spent on our program. The money that we give you in reimbursement, you have to spend it on that amount or more. You can't be what we call a nonprofit. You can't be a profit status. You can't make money on the program. We can't give you $1,000 in reimbursement and you spend $200 in labor and $400 in food. You have to spend what we're giving you. And we understand some months may be different. Like you may have some months that show you're for profit, but we'll go back and look at other months to make sure that it all comes out in the wash that you are nonprofit. So that's the significance of all of this, is that you're showing us that you're spending the money that we're giving you on our program or more. But you are allowed to use not just food and milk, but you're allowed to use labor as well. The budget just kind of tells us what you're spending your CACFP funds on. That's essentially what it does. Some allowable expenses. So all expenses, again, that you charge off to CACFP must be listed in the budget section, and again, approved by our office. Now, like I said, let's say the example of the lady that tried charging off $1,000 in gas, and I asked for more questions. I asked her questions like, well, how often a week are you shopping? And can you prove to me how you're using this for CACFP purposes? And then she's like, oh, I'm not spending that much on CACFP. So she dropped it down to say $300. So what it may look like in your budget is say $1,000, but I'm approving you for $300. Now our system has been a little bit iffy. We may make you go back in and change it to 300, or I just may approve you for 300 because sometimes our system shows two different things. I'm not sure how it does, but make sure when you look, so it will say CACFP, or it will say, and when we look at the budget, there's a column for all expenses for the center, and we'll say mileage. So say there's $1,000 in mileage for the center, and then there's a CACFP section. That's where you'll put the 300. And then in the next column next to that is where we approve. So it could be 1,000, 300, 300. But and again, I'll kind of show you some of this because it does come down to administrative expenses. There's some that it looks much smaller. It's because they went over the 15% threshold. Also, I mean, anything that's allowable, if you use anything for, say, the entire center, you do have to prorate that cost. So a good example of that is paper towels. So a lot of times you may buy paper towels, but you use it for the bathrooms, you use it for the classrooms, for washing hands, and, you know, for food. So you're using it for everything and in the kitchen. So what we tell people is to prorate it. So maybe what you could do is maybe if you're using it 50% for the center and 50% for CACFP, you can split the cost in half. Or what some centers also do is maybe 1 month they're charging paper towels to CACFP and the next month they're not. The next month they're charging it to CACFP, then the next month they're not. So again, if you're using something for the entire center, including CACFP, you can't charge it all off to CACFP. You have to charge it off to the center and to CACFP. And then only items or services solely used for CACFP purposes can be charged off to the program. And we've seen a lot of things that are unallowable that people try to put in there. And these are some of them. Like we've seen diapers on receipts that they left on. We've seen actually beer. We've seen clothes. Anything that does not meet meal pattern requirements needs to be taken off the receipt. It goes into non-reimbursable section. An example of that is cookies are not allowed on CACFP. Anything that's not CN labeled, like say you buy non-CN labeled chicken nuggets, but you serve bread and baked beans instead. Well, you can't charge it off to CACFP because it's not creditable. Now, it's different if it's an ingredient. Now, if you're buying Velveeta to make macaroni and cheese because the grain is towards your reimbursable meal, that's different. But if you're buying something to stand alone, like a donut, you have to put that in non-reimbursable. Items that you don't claim for reimbursement. I've had a couple of centers that like say I'm there, and especially like with COVID and stuff, what they have done, they may have a really like 5 kids that day and they just don't want to have a low staff load. So you can order a pizza from Little Caesars and have kids eat pizza, but you're not claiming it for reimbursement because it doesn't meet requirements. But because you're not claiming it, you can't charge it off to CACFP either. But again, this is just this is not all inclusive. Just if it's not used for CACFP, you can't charge it off to CACFP. So let's talk about some other required documents. We talked about the building for the future. It is required for everyone except for adult daycare centers. In an adult daycare center, you would know if you are one. It's someone who takes care of adults. So those that are handicapped or over the age of 65, they are the only ones that do not have to have a building for the future. When you're multi-sided, we have to have a copy of one. So just make sure that if you're multi-sided, you send that to us when you're filling out your application agreement. You must distribute this to all your kids. And then again, you must upload it. We must have a copy of this every year. And this is what a copy of the building for the future, this is what it looks like. Now, just make sure at the very bottom, left-hand corner, it says sponsoring organization. Make sure your information is in there. Training. It is required, and this is for everybody, that every institution must have a CACFP trainer, someone that you designate to do the training. You must have annual training. You must document it, have an agenda, the topics and signatures of everybody that attends. Or you need to also keep a sign-in sheet. And then a reminder that all your trainings are from October 1st to September 30th. So just make sure you have all the trainings that you were supposed to have done by September 30th. So it'd be October 1, September 30th of 2021 to handle for this current year. These are the topics that are required. So with civil rights, really everybody must have civil rights training. Anybody that has anything to do with child nutrition. So we're talking teachers that help serve, everybody must have civil rights training. Now the other ones, you can do it for everybody, that's fine, but you don't have to. It's helpful, like your teachers knowing about the meal patterns or knowing about record keeping, like make sure you mark people in attendance. But civil rights training, everybody must have that one. There's a couple ways you can do it. So every year we do have a Zoom training, which we've already done. It was October 1st. And you can have everybody sit there, listen to it. It was about a 30-minute, 1-hour training. We also have you can go to the civil rights. So this one is self-paced. You can go out there and do the self-paced training. Everybody can have their own login. Everybody can do it and get a certificate at the end. Maybe you just have one person that does the civil rights training online and they train everybody else. What we will do is if you do civil rights training, have one person and then one person's going to teach it to everybody else, we can send you the slides that were used for that. And we just don't like to put them, I don't think they're out there. But if you like people that did do the live training, we sent them the slides so they could teach their staff, go over it with them. But or you can all sit there and watch it together and do it together on the online training. It will spit out one certificate, but you can do a sign-in sheet. So it's however you choose to do it. So with those trainings, they can be one-on-one, they can be conference style, they can be to everyone, they can be to a couple of people, but civil rights have to be for everyone, but the rest of them, it's however you choose to do it. We have a lot of people that do kind of a professional development day and they kind of cover this in there and they just kind of do it for everybody, all the topics. But I will say too, something to think about when it comes to training, what people sometimes don't understand is when it comes to training, you may have, just say you have a new cook and you go over they come on staff, so you go over the meal patterns with them, you go over accurate meal counts, say, in record keeping, and maybe the claim review process. You cover those kind of topics with them. Make sure, even if it's one-on-one, that you're writing it down and then have them sign that they read, they saw it. And that's okay as long as one person hears it. As long as these covered topics are covered, you are covered. But maybe you also have a cook and the cook's not new, but they're having a lot of problems with the meal patterns. They're just not serving enough. They're not serving the right things. Every time you talk to that cook, I would definitely have them sign and say that you talked about meal patterns, because one, you're showing us that you covered the topic. But if you ever have to let that person go, you have the documentation showing that you had to talk to them 4 times and they still weren't doing it correctly. So it can kind of work both hand in hand. Yes, we need it for our program for you to meet requirements as an institution, but it might also help you in case you have something that you need to do with an employee. You have the documentation as well. So again, if you have to talk to them 4 times, make sure you're writing it down 4 times. We do have additional trainings. Again, we have the state agency training, our training calendar. You can go there. I need to add on here now, we have our self-paced trainings. So you can do our trainings live, like we're doing right now. You go to the training calendar. You do not have to go to the training calendar if you do our self-paced trainings. And then Team Nutrition also has some webinars every 3rd Thursday of the month. So if you yourself are wanting more training, this is what you can do to get more training or have your staff go to it. I will go ahead and kind of make a little plug right here. I did this morning infant training. The reason why infants, we do have it a little bit in our meal patterns, I think, or in our administrative one, we have infants. I think it's in our administrative one because it's kind of the director that's telling the teachers what to do. But we do have an infants, and it's about a 1 hour, 1.5 if there's a lot of people with questions. But it's kind of geared for teachers. It's kind of geared, in my mind, is the people that are actually dealing with the infants and doing the infant information. So again, that's why we kind of broke them out, to make it easier and the right people are going to the right trainings. So this is just some stuff I kind of want you to be aware of as a person who's kind of over your agency, or that you're dealing with CACFP more on the administrative side. In case you're not aware, we have what's called a food buying guide. Every entity was received a hard copy. Well, this year they brought it out into an app, and it's good with iOS and Android. It's phenomenal. It's actually way easier to read than the book. This is what you can go to be like, can I serve? Anything that's in here has a standard of identity. If it's not in here, that's when you have to have a CN label or a product formulation statement. So if you go in here and type in beef jerky, it's not going to pull up. But if you type in like corn, it'll say all the different types of corn, and then how much you should buy and how much you should open. It's much easier to read than the big thick book that we gave you. So that's just something, a suggestion we just want to make you to be aware of if you're the person that's maybe doing the buying as well, that you may want to use the app instead of using the big thick book. Something else that I have absolutely loved, this is out under the meal patterns in our resource library. It's called, and you can Google it, it's called CACFP Crediting Handbook. This is kind of the Cliff Notes version of the food buying guide. So this page may look a little bit familiar to you. We kind of have some pages like this in our training manual, but I just want to let you know that our training manual is not up to date. We received this book when our training manual was almost done, and a lot of it has changed. And so we just didn't want to, we didn't have the time. The training manual also got out a little bit late as it was. So we did not update the training manual with these pages, but this book, it's really, really good. It's not very, I think it's like 94 pages, but it's just, they make it big, beautiful, colorful. So it's so big that I can't email it out. It's too big. I'm trying to think, I think the whole document is out in the resource library. If not, it gives you the link. Just copy and paste that link or click on it and it will take you to this. But this is just an example of like the meat alternate section. And that's why I call it the Cliff Notes version. If you look here, it says beef jerky and it says, no, it's not creditable as a meat alternate. You can also go to like bologna and it says maybe, and then always look in the comment section. Like the refried beans, again, this is for meat alternate. Refried beans, it says, see, yes, it's creditable, but see page 1-12 of the food buying guide. So that may refer more to the book, but you can also type in refried beans and go to that as well. But it's just a great Cliff Notes version of like, yes, this counts. Yes, no, this doesn't, and where to go to find more information about it. I can't talk highly more about this book because a lot of people are very intimidated by the food buying guide, which I understand, but I'm telling you, between this handbook and the app, it's made life so much easier. Matter of fact, I've been out of the field for 2 years, and about a year or so before they've had the app. I used the app my last year. It's phenomenal. It's so much easier to read, and I'm not having to lug around that big book. Something else just to kind of throw at you, just to let you know about, is we do require procurement. This is just, we have this in our procurement section in the resource library. It's just kind of, are you doing it correctly? I am going to have a procurement training for all. So everybody in CACFP, everybody in child nutrition, not just CACFP. So schools, daycares, everybody follow the same essential procurement. I'm going to do 2 trainings a year. And it's really good, especially if you're big. If you spend a lot of money, like over $250,000, I would really suggest whoever does your procurement, make sure they're following federal procurement guidelines. It's really for all child nutrition programs, but really if you have any federal entity, if you have any federal dollars, there's going to be something specific to child nutrition. But basically, if you receive federal dollars from anybody, you're going to have to kind of follow the same process. My mom works for the Department of Transportation. She works at FAA. They have to do the same procurement. Everybody in the federal entity that receives federal dollars has to follow the exact same federal procurement guidelines. So again, we have a couple of things that are food specific. And actually it's more for schools, not even for daycares that it's requiring, but I would highly suggest whoever does handle your procurement process, who handles your going out to bid, who gets the food bid, then I highly suggest, especially if you spend a lot of money, and I know we have some large entities out here, I would definitely have somebody, whoever does that, go to the procurement. It goes through the whole process of what's required through going through the bid process to managing the contract. It will be about an hour and a half long to 2 hours. But again, I just wanted to kind of make you aware of that. You want to know a little bit more about procurement. We have a small little entity in the administrative one that we do. But again, I just want to touch base about that procurement, especially if you're a very large entity. If you contract for food service, so this is like if you have a contract with the school district for food or with any other vendor that supplies your food, like you don't go out and buy food, they bring the food to you every day. You are required to have an agreement, and we do suggest that you contact our office. Again, you can just email the CACFP. Cassie is more than likely going to be the one that you talk to about this. We have 2 different contracts. We have one for schools and say tech centers, and we have one for any other vendor. We just want to make sure you are getting the right contract. So you do have to have a contract that we have created that you have to use. You have to use our prototype. So again, just contact our office and we will get that to you. So just a couple of things I'm going to really quickly, just kind of, if you contract for any food, I'm kind of let you know the process of that. So once you have the contract in place, if you are with the school district, you don't keep any menu assert forms. The school keeps those production records for you. So the school is the only one that if we have a question about something that they're serving you, we were going to contact the school. We're going to go to the school. Now, if it's a vendor, we're not going to really contact the vendor. We only contact you. But if the school is on our program, we can go and look at their records because it's child nutrition records is what they're keeping. But if it's a vendor, we're not going to call them. It's your agreement. We're going to talk to you about it, and you will contact the vendor. So what happens is they're going to give you a documentation whenever the food's delivered. It doesn't matter if it's a school or a vendor, they're going to give you documentation. And what that documentation is a contract meal delivery receipt. And I have a copy of one. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So you make sure you're getting that form because it is in the contract and it states that they have to use that. That contract meal delivery receipt is your menu assert forms. So do not get rid of those. So if say for the month of December, you operated all the month of December. I know there was Christmas, but we'll act like it didn't happen in December. And you have a week that you have no contract meal delivery receipts, we will take, but you claimed meals, we'll take those meals back because you do not have any documentation showing us that you had meal received. Now, if it's a school, we can go back to the school, but you really need to keep those menu assert forms because that's what tells us what you served that day. So what happens at the end of the month, they will give you all those forms. They'll give you the contract delivery receipts. At the end of the month, the school or the vendor that you're using for food is going to bill you, and you pay them that bill, and then you turn around and reimburse funds from us, and we pay you for the meals. And I'm trying to see. So this is what the contract meal delivery receipt looks like. So it makes sure it's very detailed because it lets you know what they served, what they sent you, and how to serve it to make sure the correct serving size was given. One other thing I kind of want to caution about that I've seen several times is the milk. I've had some people where the vendor did give them milk, but say maybe I had a daycare and they maybe gave them milk twice a week. So they give them milk Monday morning because they had a fridge. They give them milk Monday morning and say Wednesday morning. Well, what's going to show on the breakfast meal delivery receipt is going to show that they got 7 gallons, say 7 gallons of milk, but there's going to be no milk for lunch, no milk at all on Tuesday, and then milk again Wednesday for breakfast only. Please put someplace, it may say 7 gallons, but please, like on this one as an example, like someplace under milk, say how much you used for that day. And that the rest of it is going to be used for the rest of the week. So just FYI, if you get milk for one day, but to use for multiple days, just make sure that you indicate that someplace, because what's going to look like is say that 7 gallons that you used it all for breakfast and then they never gave you milk again. And then you didn't have milk for lunch. You didn't have milk for Tuesday at all. So just make sure someplace we understand that maybe they gave you the milk for one day to last you for 3 days. Just indicate that someplace. Now, I just kind of also want to make sure, and I need to add, I'm going to add a slide to this. So I'm going to change the slides. But if you are contracting with a school district only, not a vendor, just a school district, they are required to charge you a certain amount. They are required. They have no choice. They get in trouble by us if they don't charge you the free rate for breakfast, lunch, and snack. And the lunch rate also is the value of commodities and a 7 incentive. So essentially, if you contract with a school, you're paying them more than what we reimburse you. But they have no choice. They have to do that. Also, if you contract with a school, their fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. You have to get a new contract in July. So in June, you need to get one for the new year. Just because your fiscal year starts October 1 to September 30th, we go by the school fiscal year for a school contract, because that's when they have to get all their contracts in place. So that's something that we kind of put in this year. So you may not have been aware of that before, but if you do contract with a school, that contract is good from July 1st to June 30th. Now, the slide that I want to add in here, so you are aware, is say, and this happens to a lot of people, you contract with a school district and you are licensed for 25. And the school, every breakfast is going to give you 25 meals because they don't know how many kids are showing up. And then by 9 o'clock, you have to tell them how many kids you have, and then they'll send that many for lunch. Well, if you have, say, that's what happens, and a school gives you 25 breakfasts, but you have 18 kids in care and 18 kids that ate a meal, you cannot claim the 25 meals. You have to claim how many kids were there and how many kids consumed a meal. Yes, they're going to charge you for 25 because that's how many meals they gave you, but you can only claim the kids that ate. You can't claim the meals that they gave you. So I hope that makes sense. because I think some people get a little confused with that. But just because they gave you 25 meals and they're billing you for 25 meals, but if you have 18 kids in care and 18 kids that ate, then that's all you can claim with us is the 18 kids. Now you pay for the meals, you can do whatever you want with the other ones, but you can't claim them because a child did not consume it. Okay, so this is something else that this is kind of, this is new. So we've always needed some backup information. We just have never, so Cassie and I love forms and all that kind of stuff, but we do need to have a paper trail of why things have been happening the way they were. So if you are wanting to add a site or remove a site, there will be some documentation that we need. So if you go to the site maintenance page, just so you are aware, if you need to make any changes to the site maintenance page, you need to contact us. You do not have access to that, and we will make those changes. So the site maintenance page, you do not have access to. And also, just an FYI, so for any sites that are not licensed, the license type selected should be none, and then the capacity would be 0. And this happens quite a bit in our at-risk programs at a school district, that they don't have DHS licenses. So just something for you to remember. If you are multi-sided, so something that you need to be aware of, if you right now are single-sided and you're going to go multi-sided, you have to fill out a whole new application. So you need to contact our office to fill that out. They're different. We're trying to streamline things, but because of COVID and everything else, it's going to be at least next year when this all change takes place, because this all came about too late. But so we're hoping eventually, if you're single-sided, that the way the budget will be, it'll be seamless to go ahead and change to multi-sided. But right now they're so different that you can't use the same application if you're single-sided. So I just want you to be aware, if you are single-sided right now and you're like, oh no, but we have 3 entities participating, you have to fill out a whole new application for those other sites. And you'll have to include the 3rd one in there. So just an FYI, if you are new to being multi-sided, you need to contact us. Now, if you already are multi-sided, say you have 3 sites and you want to add a 4th site or add 3 more sites, we do have to have a form. You go to multi-sided section in the resource library, and there is a new site add form. You have to fill that out. You also need to send us a copy of your license or documentation from DHS if a license is not required, except if you're a school. If you're a school, you're exempt from that. But if you're a daycare, we need a copy of your license. If you are not required to have a license at your entity, maybe you're a church and you're just doing the at-risk program, and you're like, no, we don't need a license. Again, go to the resource library under multi-sided, and there's a DHS form in there. We have a form that you can fill out to send to DHS that they can just approve, or to say yes, no, they don't need one, etc. If you try just to contact DHS, tell them I don't need a license, we've had a lot of confusion with that. So that's why we created a form that you can send to DHS. Again, that's in the resource library. If you're also adding a site, we will need an unaffiliated site agreement. If you're a nonprofit, private nonprofit, we must also have a copy of the 501c3. So what this means is say I am Kendra Incorporated, and I decided that I want to have an after-school program for tutoring and daycare kind of little situation, and I want to have it at my church. The church has a room, and they said I could use it. What I would do at that point is I would have to have an unaffiliated site agreement with them, because I don't own the site. I don't have anything to do with the site. The site belongs to the church. I have to have a form that's filled out by the church to say, yes, it's okay that they're going to have an eating site at my location, even though I'm not paying rent there, or maybe I am paying rent, but maybe I'm paying them $20 a month to use the room. But if I'm not affiliated with that site at all, I'm not a pastor, I'm just a patron, and I want to use that eating site, I have to have an unaffiliated site agreement form. You also, to have a new site, you need to check the National Disqualification List. What that is, we call it the NDL list. It's to make sure that site qualifies, because if that site, say 4 years ago, somebody else used that site and it was shut down because they didn't follow CACFP guidelines correctly, and the people that ran it are on the NDL list. That means they can have nothing to do with the program for 7 years. So you have to ensure that the site's available and the people that are going to be running the site can run the site. You do have to have a login for that. We have instructions on how to get into how you can do a registration, and it's on page 271. We also require, if you're an at-risk program only, if you're only doing at-risk, so like a school, you do have to give us like an area map, a low income report information, etc. So if you have questions about at-risk, we also have an at-risk training. We have one, I think, at the end of this on Thursday. It's a 2-hour one if you're doing at-risk only. I highly suggest going to that. But that is some documentation that we will need if you are wanting to have a new site. If you are at risk, again, the area map, what people get confused about with the area map is it is required to send in a map. So the deal is you have to be in an eating site of less than 50% or over 50% free and reduced, because it means you're in a high risk area of kids that are more in the poverty area. So you have to be in a school district or school site that is 50% free or reduced or more. You'll find that report on our website to tell you if that site is or if that school is. But what we have to have is a map, and the map has to tell us like where your eating site is and what school area that it falls in. So what people get confused about when we talk about an area map is, say I'm at this church and I'm doing a feeding program, but maybe all my kids that I go pick up, I pick them up at XYZ school. But if I were to live at my location, wherever I'm serving meals, if I were to live there, where would my kids go to school? That is the map information, not where your kids attend, but maybe my kids that I am tutoring go to XYZ school. But if I were to live at that location where I serve meals, it's actually ABC school. So we have to have an area map of ABC school showing that you're in that district and where you're located at. So again, it's where the kids would, if you lived at your eating site, where would your kids go to school? Just a little helpful hint about the map. If it's Oklahoma City or Tulsa Public Schools, go to their school website. And it's great. You just type in your address and it will tell you what schools you belong to. Just print that information out. If you're at a small district, so say I'm from a really small town, one school in the whole town, one elementary, one middle school, one high school, and you just take the district map and you just mark where you're at, and you can just send that in as well. And then there's another way that's called the hometown locator that you can use as well. And we gave that site right here. So just a helpful hint if you are at risk and we need a copy of the map. Now, if you are at risk, we need a copy of the low income report. You can find that report on our website. You'll use the latest one, so it'll be fiscal year 20. So say, again, when you fill out the map, it says that it's XYZ school. So it's XYZ elementary, XYZ high school, and XYZ middle school. You can use any of those locations. It used to be just an elementary school, but you can use any. So maybe the high school is like 10% free and reduced. Maybe the middle school is 25%, but the elementary is 65%. Then you would use the elementary school, because you have to show us you're in an area over 50%. So again, just a little bit tidbit with at-risk, and we do have an at-risk training. Again, that is on self-paced, and we have an at-risk training that we'll be doing live once a month via Zoom. Now, say you have a site that you no longer want to participate at. Again, we have a remove site form, and it is located again in the multi-sided section in the resource library. So just fill that out, send it to us, and we will remove that site from your application. So let's talk a little bit about the budget. So this is the budget that you would fill out in the online application, and just some things that I want to make you aware of, that some things that we have seen that people aren't exactly doing correctly. Now, if you look at number 8, it's the number of facilities. So this right here is telling us that they have 8 centers. Now, you may just do at-risk only. Put them only in the at-risk center. Because I've had that a lot where they're like, they put 8 in childcare, but they are really at risk. So whatever you are doing with our program, just make sure you put the correct number of facilities in the correct section. Now, number 9 is going to be the total number of children participating. Now, if you are an at-risk only, everybody eats for free. So yeah, it's very plausible to have 200, like with this, they're saying they have 233 free. But if you have any reduced or not eligible, you will put that out and tell us how many are totally participating at all your sites, at all your feeding sites. Now, on number 10 right here, it says public or nonprofit institution. So what people get confused about right here is that we need the total federal funds expended in the previous year, excluding CACFP. We are federal dollars. So if you are a daycare center and you're getting funds from DHS with contracting, you'll put that amount here. If you receive federal grants, if you're Head Start and you receive federal funding for your Head Start, that's what the number goes here in number 10. And I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but that is where it will go. So again, in number 10, it's if you receive any federal funds, not our federal funds, but anybody else's federal funds, that amount goes there. So, because people all the time will leave that blank. And it's like, and we know if you're a daycare and people are swiping in, that's federal fund. It will be based on your fiscal year. So what you will do on number 10, you'll see underneath it says list the months of the institution's fiscal year to make it easier, because that would be really hard. So like this institution right here, their fiscal year is May to April. So it's whatever your fiscal year is, but that's a very, very good question. And it does go under number 10 as well. And if you have any other questions that you can think of, please, please. So this is the budget we were talking about, and we want our single-sided. So our single-sided budget looks different, but I know it's more work, but this is much more clear. And we think our single-sided is going to go to this, and that's why, since they're different, that's why a single site going multi-site has to do a whole new application. We're hoping to get them all the same, but see, like right here, they're telling us how many of their employees are that they're having for the whole institution, what their employees are paying them. But this is the CACFP portion, is in the second column. And then see right here, you can see that we only approved 12,000, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. And this is like, if you look, we have administrative, this is all administrative stuff at the very top. This is not food service. And we really want to get that changed too, because it does get very weird, like not weird, but it gets very confusing because a lot of people are putting their teachers up in administrative when they should really be down in food service labor. But again, with this entity right here, they only are charging off CACFP for administrative labor only. So again, approving CACFP expenses, all expenses approved by CMP will be listed in the last column. So if we approve it, it will be in the last column, the amount. And again, we may require some documentation. We've had people do travel or advertising or training. If we may ask for you to share with us or send us something about why you, like I said, with the mileage, the mileage didn't sound right to me, so I asked questions about it. So she did end up adjusting it. So we may ask you what, like we've had people with paper costs, like say $1,000, and they're a small center of 25. I'm like, why are you sending $1,000 a year on paper for CACFP? And they're like, oh yeah, no, we don't spend it. That's for our whole center. So we may ask for documentation or anything else like that. And we're not being mean. We're just having to ask because we have to figure out what you're spending for CACFP versus the whole entire, because it does get confusing. But that's what I like about your budget it's a better idea of what you're spending on our program versus what you're actually spending for everything else. So what you will do, so like if you looked at the administrative, it was blue with a line underneath it. So when you're adding somebody's salary, you click on that blue line and then it makes you add a person. So this person, they put the employee name, they put what they do, how much they get paid annually, and then how much of that is for CACFP. And if you can see here, they're saying that they get paid $16,000 a year, but they're only spending $5,000 on CACFP. And right here, we hadn't approved it. They have 4 pages. This is the last page. This one wasn't approved, or we maybe haven't gotten to it yet to approve it. And sometimes it has happened. I've helped approve applications, and sometimes you're like, oh man, I forgot I have to put something in there. But once you add an employee, so like you add information right here. Can you guys see my cursor? Do I need to change cursors out? Because I can definitely do that if I need to. But if you can't see my cursor, let's see here. I'll just keep the mouse. I think this will do it. So you see that's where you edit it when you see the one with perfect. I'm glad that you can. Awesome. The one with the pencil is the one where you edit it. The one with the X next to it, that's where you delete this person. Just make sure once you add their information, you hit add right here. So it won't add the person until you hit add. And then when you're done, you'll just hit close and it will close it out. Now here's another one when they do the salaries. That's what it looks like when you're done with it. But this is where you add the person's name, add their position, and then you put all their information in here and it will calculate it. Make sure you hit calculate. And then once you hit calculate, it will add, then hit add. And then this is where we go to approve the amount here. But again, how it looked the last time is what it looks like when you get out of it and come back in. It's all like every person's in their name and it has just the total amount that we're trying to approve. But this is what it's going to look like whenever you're actually trying to enter their information into the system. So the reason why on this person, let me see here. Maybe we're not there yet. No, we're not there yet. I was getting a little bit ahead of myself. But this is, again, it will show you the total administration right here. And then see, we only approved the 12,000 right here, but this is how much they were trying to do CACFP. This is in the administrative. Down here is where you have all your food labor. And again, we hadn't approved anything here yet. And again, this is kind of an old, I used somebody that was filling an application that never got approved from like 3 or 4 years ago. So I don't know why it was not approved, but you can tell here they did not go in and we did not approve it. And sometimes this does happen. You may call and be like, why did you not approve my food service labor? And like, a lot of times it's just because we forgot. Because we have to go in manually on each person and approve the amount. So sometimes it just happens that way. Or if we'll give you an explanation if we didn't do it or why we didn't do that. So this is where it comes down. It's in Part D. And we talked about you cannot charge 15% or more for service labor. So the reason why is because right here is this is how much they were trying to approve. And again, we only approved $12,000, but they were trying to approve $40,000 for administrative labor. Well, for reimbursement, their projected reimbursement for that year was $110,000. Well, this right here tells us in number 3 that they cannot exceed $16,000. That's 15% of 110. So right here it says no, it's a non-compliance. Now, I will tell you, I found it last year. I'm like, it's letting people save this, even though it's not allowed. So now we have it changed to where if it's not letting you save it or submit it, it's because you go back to Part D, you may be over that 15% rule. It will no longer let you save if you were under that rule or if you go over that amount. So that's why. And again, it's only for administrative. It's not for food service. For food service, you can have however much money you want, as long as it's reasonable. You can't pay somebody $50 an hour. And I mean, I'd get paid $50 an hour. I'd love for that. I would definitely be a cook, but it has to be a reasonable amount. And we may even say like, can you please show us documentation of, and I've done it. I've asked some people, I need to see your documentation of, are you getting paid that amount? Now it's okay if you go a little bit over because it's a budget. So maybe you have a cook that you're paying right now $9 an hour, but you have $12 an hour in the system because the thing is the way you are set up that you could give a raise every 6 months of $1 if however they're doing. So it's okay that you have it say $12 and you're only paying them $9 now because you may give them a raise. So you're still under your threshold. But now we may question it if you're saying, oh, I'm paying them $50 an hour to cook. I mean, I will come and work for you for $50 an hour, but it has to be, a reasonable amount. And we may ask to see some documentation if it sounds a little bit high for us. And again, just a reminder, you cannot go over the 15% of your total reimbursement. So as you can see here in your Part E of your budget, this right here is what we approved for your expenses. And this is how much you're telling us that the sponsor portion, this is your expenses and this is your revenue. And right here in number 3 is your profit loss. So that's why it's very important. Remember earlier when I said, do not tell us how much you're getting reimbursed for CACFP. You need to tell us every other federal dollar amount that you're getting, any money that you're getting federally. The reason why is because we have to make sure that you're in a profit, that you're in a for-profit. So you're showing us that, yes, I get money from DHS. Yes, I get grant money. Yes, I get money for anything else that you get federal funds for. That goes in here to show us that you have enough funds that in case that you are financially viable. So you want to be in a, if that shows a negative dollar amount in number 3 on this form, we will not approve the application because you're not financially viable. So again, just make sure that you have, so when we say, like, if you're a school district and you're like, yeah, we get title funds, we get commodity dollars, everything that you get federally. You have Century 21 grant, if that's a federal grant, make sure you're putting all your money in there to show us how much that you are in a for-profit status. So essentially what this is telling us by looking at it, this is why it's very important financials. It's telling us that you do spend $500,000, that your total revenue is $1 million. So that means you have $800,000 as a profit, but you're, for our program, you're only spending $98,000. So it just lets us know that you can operate our system, that you are completely financially viable to operate. Now, this is also in the application. It's regarding your on-site monitoring. So just a reminder that you do have to put your monitors in here. So this tells you, like, your county, you'll put your county in here and list how many sites in that county, and then you'll add it and you'll see it will drop it down. So this one is, they're not metro, they're rural. So this one says that they have 3 sites in Hughes County and 5 sites in Okfuskee. They have 0 metro and they have 8 rural sites. So this lets you know about your total full-time employees that are required to be on the program. So this is just saying that they need a total of 0.133 full-time employee. And again, you have a monitoring. So whenever you do your on-site, whenever you're multi-sited, you have to have you have to do monitoring. So this will just tell you, it doesn't mean you have to hire somebody full-time just to do monitoring, but this is telling us right here how many of your devoted monitor activities, and you list the name of the person and how many weeks are they going to spend monitoring. So this just told us that they're using 6 a week, divide that by 40 hours, it's 0.15. So it meets the requirements that was mentioned on the previous, on your budget. This is, again, your information in your budget. So when you do monitor, however many sites that you have, you are required to do 3 monitoring reviews per year. There are 2 ways that you can do it. There's one that mostly everybody does. It's called just doing 3. One can be announced. The other 2 have to be unannounced. I've had some people, they do them all unannounced, and that's fine. The other one is called review averaging. If you want more information about it, it's on page 286. But you do still have to have 3 per year, but it just tells you how and when you have to conduct them. But again, everybody just does usually do the 3. That's 1 announced and 2 unannounced because it's just easier. But if you do have a new facility, you must monitor them before they can start CACFP operations. Claims. If you are going to claim, you're going to claim, but for claims, just a reminder that you have up to 60 days to submit a claim. So again, after your 60th day, so we're talking December 31st, you have 60 days after that to file a claim. Make sure to try to keep your payment notices on file. So after you claim, you'll go back. Once you claim and we pay you, you go back to you'll go to your claim summary page and go down the bottom. It'll say print payment notice. Print that out. It's a really good habit to get into doing that, because I say that because maybe you have somebody in the office that's certifying it, but you're entering it in the claim, but somebody else is certifying it. What has happened to me before, even, I went out to do a review, and I did a review for, say, December, because it's January, and they submitted the claim. I saw the claim in there. But what happened was, I saw the claim in there, but the claim wasn't submitted. They never got paid for that claim. So I technically was not supposed to do a review on that month. The person forgot to certify it. So if you're the person, I would go in and always make sure, because if you're not seeing that payment notice pop up, then you'll know that you haven't gotten paid. And if you haven't gotten paid, someone didn't certify it. So it's just kind of a reminder. It's a really good habit to get into, to make sure that you're printing out the payment notice and keep it with all your records at the end of the month. Any revisions that you need to make to the claim, we always used to ask for information before we'd let you revise it, but we've had a lot of things happen in the office, and this is going back like 5 years. We do have to have justification on why you're revising your claim. We do have a claim revision form. So just go into the system, print that out. It can, I mean, things happen all the time. Maybe because you're multi-sided, you switch the numbers for one center A and center B, you messed them up. You got them confused. Maybe you accidentally put your snacks and your lunches, you flipped them. Maybe you forgot your infants. These things happen all the time. It's not a big deal. We just have to know why you're revising your claim. And again, we have to have documentation of why you're revising your claim. So just an FYI, we have our institution originals. Again, so how it's set up in the resource library and in the manuals, we have the originals, which are the blank pages, are on page 231 for everybody, and any multi-sided extra stuff is on page 269. If you go into the resource library, we have a separate section. So we have the whole manual, and then we took out the institution originals, and we took out multi-sided originals as well. And they're by themselves. So you can just open that up and print whatever pages that you need. So again, if you need the examples to those pages are in the training manual, but we just put all the originals that are blank in one section of their own if you're not familiar with that. Also, if there may be some that are interactive. So there may be some that are in Excel or PDF that you can go to and you can fill it out. Again, go to worksheets and anything underneath there. If there's any form that you would like to have interactive that we don't have in there, please let us know. We can do it. There's several of us that know how. We don't know what form sometimes that you need or want to be interactive. Maybe the monitoring form. Can you do your monitoring form on, say, an iPad? Just let us know, and we can definitely make something like that interactive if it's something that you might be interested in. Thank you guys all for joining me today. I hope you guys learned some information. I'm going to be around for just a little bit, so you can feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.